Good afternoon, everyone. It's July, or not July, but August the 8th, pardon me, 2024. As you can see, I haven't been on the air for a few days. After that heat wave last week for the whole week, and then it got suddenly cooler by the end of the weekend. Monday, I ended up getting caught in a draft somewhere and caught another cold and the chills and everything, so I've been kind of sick for the last few days. But I wanted to come on and say that I'm okay. But I also saw something today that I think is very important for you to hear. That people are still working on things even over the summer. That something I heard on the CTV National News today was that the mayor of Toronto had put into a conference with a bunch of organizations about youth today, about what we can do for the youth. It's because the police were saying after the pandemic they've been seeing over 100% increase in crime now, with the youth running wild as well. And so they were looking at ways to counteract this and do something to stop this. And so one of the workers was saying, literally, well, we've had a lot of problems here. How do we deal with this? And there's too many gaps between cracks in the system here, and everybody's falling into the cracks these days. And the mayor was saying, well, one thing we can do is perhaps a city, if we can get a good pilot project going that's been tested somewhere else, is working, that perhaps a city can put some dollars towards helping on a pilot project. So I thought that was very, very good to hear today. And I also wanted to mention how bad trauma can be on children and how it can affect children and even teenagers if they don't get the mental health, their mental health issues addressed right away. And I want to use one example, which seeing this today on TV brought me back to my working again as a security guard. This was probably maybe around 1977 or so, when I was working on the mall. It was the Elmvale Mall, I'll mention it, at the time. And it was a closed-in mall at that time. And the reason the guards were there too was they were experiencing a lot of mischief and problems, something in some ways similar to what the Rideau Center is now seeing. But it's now an open mall again. But this particular weekend, I should have been working there, but I was directed up to the Carp Fair because I'm to be at the gate to handle the money coming in from the people purchasing tickets. And it's then one of the firemen from the area, up in the Carp area, came in and said, "Did you hear what happened down in Ottawa? The terrible tragedy?" And I said, "No, I haven't heard anything." Then he has turned around and he said, "Well, there was a serious situation at the Elmvale Mall." And I said, "Oh my God, that's where I work normally. What happened?" And he said, "Well," and so he explained to me that what they were hearing, the first reports that came out, was that a car caught fire. 3 children were in the car. There was two toddlers and a baby strapped in a car seat. And apparently one of the kids were possibly playing with matches and set the car on fire. And the car somehow rolled into the shopping center, took out a big panel of the shopping center, I guess you might say, and started setting the shopping center on fire. So we were kind of shocked. I was anxious to get back to Ottawa after hearing this. And then when I did get back to Ottawa and got back to work, a little boy I knew, he was about 5 years old, named Johnny, and he was a sweetheart, but his mother was unfortunately not able to really take care of him properly. So I was the one that handled him on the mall, and he just adored me because he realized I could be strict, but I could also be fair. So I had a relationship with this little boy, and he was so terribly upset. And I asked him, well, what happened? And his version of it was that because he was 5 years old and so small, he just kind of squeezed his way through the crowd. So he came up to where the car was. By this time, finally, the fire department and the police had arrived. They managed to get the car open, although people were trying to break into the car and couldn't get into the car previous to that when they finally realized the car was on fire. And he said, well, I saw the little baby in the back seat, and he didn't have any arms and legs. And I said, oh, because I had heard from the paper clipping reports that he didn't. The arms and legs are burnt off this baby, and they couldn't save him, no matter how hard they tried. And it was shocking to me that he'd actually seen this and realized how horrific this must have been for him. So I pulled him aside and I talked to him, and he turned around and he was crying at me, and he looked up at me. He said, Chris, if you'd been here, you would have saved him, just like you saved the man in the parking lot. And I'm saying, unfortunately I wasn't here, and it was probably just luck that I saved the man in the parking lot, because the man in the parking lot was on the ground, and I was on the Santa Claus display at that time, which during Christmas time I normally am, because I'm up with our guard who's playing Santa Claus, and I bring the toddlers up and the children up to see Santa Claus, and another guard replaces me temporarily on the mall. And I happened to look out this door that day, and I saw the man on the ground flipping around and realizing the man's having a seizure. So I yelled at Santa Claus, emergency, took off out the door. And fortunately, I had a boyfriend at the age of 14 who was epileptic, so he knew what to do for a seizure. So I had done what I had to do for him. And a few days later, this man who had had a seizure came looking for me and told me right off the bat that the doctor said I probably saved his life by doing what I did at the time. So that's kind of a story how I knew what to do with seizures. But little Johnny wasn't sleeping at night. His mother couldn't do anything with him, so I took him home with me because he trusted me and his mom trusted me. And I put him to bed at night. We had a spare bedroom. And I found the best thing that I could do was, at that time I had my standard poodle. And I put my standard poodle in bed with him. Oh, I stayed with him till he fell asleep too. That was one of the first things. And then I snuggled the dog up with him after I left the bed. And the dog stayed with him there for the night, so he had the dog to curl up with. And that was the best thing I could do for him. And he'd wake up in the morning and the dog would be there to comfort him, which was a real big help. So this is one of the things I've seen, that why I really believe in service dogs and therapy dogs and the whole 9 miles that way. I've seen that for the trauma. But he was having terrible nightmares, and even then I'd have to come in. And I'd hear burning out of his mouth. And of course, back then, like today, at least for the schools we have now, trauma experts to deal with things like this, to go into the schools, thankfully, which is a great help to be there right on the ball, on the way to go. But he and I had made friends. He helped us move later with my husband, at that time my second husband, to our house where we were. But unfortunately, eventually, he got taken by the CAS. But the thing was, I knew him when he was probably up till about 9 to 10 years old. Then he disappeared into the CAS. And then I happened to bump into him when he turned 21 years old. By this time, I was at the bus stop, and he recognized me right away. And he said, and I realized who it was. And I said, Johnny, how are you doing? And we got talking about his being on the mall and certain ways that he helped me. And he remembers all the things that I did for him and everything. And then he brought up the trauma that he experienced, that little boy being burnt in the back of the car. And he described, at the age of 21, practically the exact words that he described to me at the age of 5, what he had actually seen. So it just shows how much trauma hangs on to people. And this is what I'm glad to see today, of what Toronto is going to try and do, and hopefully other cities will take up the challenge as well and see what can be done in the situation. And I've got some of my own ideas, and I know I have some people who are in the field, have seen my videos, have talked to people in the area and are interested in hearing more of my ideas as well. So there'll be more forthcoming, but I'm going to leave the video there today as my voice is kind of running out of steam here right now. So hopefully I'll be better off over the weekend, and I will talk to you guys soon again. And bye-bye. Take care. Be safe. Watch your surroundings. And we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.